A small experiment reveals just how directly social and financial status can change a woman's perception of a man. Photographs were taken of the men from the mate pairing experiments wearing normal clothes. Each man was assigned a fake job. Some worked retail, others became high-flying music executives. The pictures were then shown to random women on the street. Based on his physical attractiveness, this man got a 4 out of 10 in the lab test. But give him an annual income of $245,000 and a high-status job.
I would say maybe an 8.
Okay, 7.
I'd probably do 6 or 7 because of money.
This guy got a 9 in the lab, but now with a 23 grand a year paycheck from an office supply store, he experienced a serious loss of sex appeal.
A 5. 4.
And this guy, who ranked lowest of all the men in the lab, got a boost from his imaginary 6-figure software business.
A 10.
清新自信每一天，黑人牙膏，国家品质标章及 GMP 厂认证。
你算过用手机打往外市话1分钟花你多少钱吗？4元、5元，还是多到9元？别再多花冤枉钱了。亚太电信不止网内免费，往外1分钟最低只要2.88元起，每通都在帮你省，省小钱才能赚大钱。现在有210万的用户跟我一样省哦。亚太电信为你省更多。
Nokia 2608爱信机，蜜桃新色上市，买就送海滩巾。
照亮的光芒升起，散开整天的活力，年轻的心往前行。每一天每个地方都有个好的开始，自信自信。
清新自信每一天，黑人牙膏，国家品质标章及 GMP 厂认证。
城市里的忙碌生活，我有 City 咖啡陪我一起。偶尔停下脚步，在我喜欢的咖啡馆，品味生活里的美好。City 咖啡邀您一起发现台湾有魅力的咖啡馆，让城市更有味道。Always open 7-Eleven。分享好咖啡，现在 City 咖啡第2杯搬家哦。
H1N1 性流感、禽流感、非典型肺炎，这些是全球性大流感的前兆吗？
An epidemic that starts in a remote part of the world can move anywhere within 24 hours.
面对致命性疾病接连而来的挑战
，We have to keep up with viruses. It's very much an arms race.
我们做了多少准备？我们是否拥有对抗病毒的新武器？
The molecular signature can be detected by this machine.
对抗致命传染病，9月5日星期六 ，Discovery 频道首播。
Sexiness. We all think we know it when we see it. Or hear it. But does sex appeal have a smell?
I could smell him, and that was just really, I think it gave me goosebumps because he was so yummy.
After a long, hard day's work, she smells better than when she left in the morning.
I think she smells like grapes. Like,
I don't
just
get it.
It's not like this big, strong, bubblegum grape smell. It's just like this little faint grape smell, and I like it.
When he went away for his military and he was gone for months, I would hug his pillow because his pillow had his scent all over it, and I was just hugging it till it smelled like me. Like, I just would not let go of that pillow.
A whole industry has developed around the idea that certain scents drive us wild and bring the possibility of sex one step closer. Scientists have long researched for a human pheromone, a secretion that influences sexual behavior. So far, they found only one that comes close. Men produce the hormone androstenone in their apocrine glands, which cluster wherever there's body hair. But it's hardly a love drug.
Females hate the smell generally of males. The androstenone seems to smell like musk in the beginning and then turns into a urine-like smell.
In Vienna, Austria, evolutionary biologist Karl Grammer is leading the world in the hunt for human pheromones. Early in his research, Grammer discovered that there was a point in the female menstrual cycle when women stopped finding the acrid smell of androstenone distasteful and began to like it.
Suddenly, at the point of ovulation, males smell good, and attractive males especially smell good.
So for men, androstenone is an efficient mating radar, repelling women unless they're fertile. But the link between a woman's sexual interest and a man's smell is even more complex than this. Salty water from a man's sweat glands blends with androstenone from the apocrine glands, and together they nurture the bacteria that live on the skin. It's a microscopic breeding ground that gives every man a unique smell. A smell that women are sharply attuned to. Elisabeth Oberzalker, a member of Grammer's team, has found the perfect way to capture eau de man.
We're having these boys run on the treadmills right now to make them really sweat. We want to find out whether there is a specific preference for the odor of one guy, which is the same for all the girls, or whether it's a sort of matching system where one girl prefers the odor of one guy and the other girl might prefer some typically different odors.
The men leave a sweaty fingerprint on their t-shirts, one that tells a woman more about them than they would ever guess.
Odor, for me, is a very interesting signal because it affects us on a very subconscious level. So we cannot really consciously interfere with what odors do to us, how we perceive them, and so on. In our brain, the processing of odors is very closely related to emotional responses.
Not only emotional responses, but genetic ones. There's an intimate connection between how we smell and what's called the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC. MHC is a section of our DNA that determines which diseases our immune system is equipped to fight. There are about 100 genes within this region, each with many different variants. No two people have the same MHC combination, and no two people smell the same.
We don't really know so far how our immune systems get into our body odor, but there is scientific evidence that they are linked. Our immune system actually determines which bacteria can live on our skin, and the bacteria is actually what makes our sweat smell.
So how do women react to men's sweaty t-shirts? The basic answer is not too surprising.
Unfortunately, the most of these smells are not very sexy.
And sometimes it's very hard to smell the differences between them.
Yeah.
But not all women feel the same way.
There was one smell I didn't find that unattractive. It was mild and not so much intense, and I wasn't disappointed about that.
That one of our women liked one of those odors very much might have two reasons. First of all, she was in her fertile window, means, yes, the general dislike of male odors was reduced. And the second reason would be that her MHC, her immune genes, were obviously quite well matched to his.
Oberzalker and Grammer found that women only liked a man's smell if two conditions were met. First, the woman had to be within a day or two of ovulation. Second, the MHC genes of the man had to be significantly different from their own. This result has now been reproduced across the world, including in Marty Hazelton's lab at UCLA.
What people prefer is body scents that are different from their own. So you get one set of genes from each of your parents. If you get different genes from each of your parents, it's thought that you have superior immunity than if you get the same MHC genes from each of your parents.
This weekend we were lying in bed, and he was like this, and he's like, "Why are you doing this?" He had his arm up, and I was like, I buried my face in his arm.
Let's preface this. I don't sweat that much.
If I were comparing the smell of Rex to a fine wine, I would say smooth and mellow and very delicious.
That's good. I like
Thank
that.
you.
I thought you'd say musky and old.
No, not a chance.
Women's noses really may be helping them sniff out a suitable mate, and at the time in their monthly cycle when they're most likely to conceive. But Oberzacher's team had a hunch that women's sense of smell was also doing something else, steering them clear of relatives. To test this, they tried a variation on the smelly t-shirt experiment. Among the t-shirts being rated, Oberzacher placed one belonging to a woman's brother or father. When confronted with the sweat of a family member, the related woman had a strong and strikingly negative reaction.
It's actually this dislike of closely related people is a sexual dislike. So this is a sexually repellent odor. Now we actually think that the major role of dislike of similar odors would be in incest avoidance, because closely related individuals will have a very similar immune system and therefore very similar odors.
Incest is a social taboo because it's a biological time bomb, leaving offspring with highly vulnerable immune systems. No wonder nature placed incest avoidance in the hands of a sense so deep that we're barely conscious of it. Evolutionary scientists believe early humans relied on the sense of smell much more than we do today.
In ancestral environments, there's a lot of uncertainty about just how closely related you are to others. If people are living in groups where there are extended kin, then you could be fairly closely related to individuals who aren't even called your siblings. So detecting kin was not quite so trivial as just listening to who gets called your brother or your sister. How is it that people detect this information? It turns out that it's through body scent.
城市里的忙碌生活，我有 CD 咖啡陪我一起。偶尔停下脚步，在我喜欢的咖啡馆，品味生活里的美好。CD 咖啡邀您一起发现台湾有魅力的咖啡馆，让城市更有味道。Always open 7-Eleven。
分享好咖啡，现在 CD 咖啡第2杯搬家哦。
你算过用手机打往外市话1分钟花你多少钱吗？4元、5元，还是多到9元？别再多花冤枉钱了。亚太电信不止网内免费，往外1分钟最低只要2.88元起。每通都在帮你省小钱才能赚大钱。现在有210万的用户跟我一样省哦。亚太电信为你省更多。
Nokia 2608爱心机蜜桃新色上市，买就送海滩巾。
想让家里有更不一样的感觉，就是这么容易。只要有了这本 IKEA 行路，就能拥有各式各样的居家布置灵感，等着你来发现，等着你来改变。IKEA 2010年新品行路上市，欢迎免费索取。
照亮的光芒升起，散开整天的活力，年轻的心往前行。每一天每个地方都有个好的开始，清新自信，
清新自信每一天，黑人牙膏，国家品质标章及 GMP 厂认证。
In Scotland, Lisa De Bruyne is investigating another aspect of incest avoidance. She's turning men's faces into female versions of themselves and seeing how the men react to these new sisters.
We can generate the sister version of this man by calculating the differences between his face and an average man's face. So here's an average female face, and we're just going to transform her face to make her look like his sister. And there, you can see now she has slightly more angled brows and the same sort of squarish chin. So now you can see this man and his sort of sister version. So she has some facial characteristics that are similar to him. Okay, so what we're going to do here today is...
DeBrine has asked these 5 men to rate 5 women for attractiveness. And to see if they subconsciously recognize themselves in these women, she's also asking them to rate the faces for trustworthiness.
Okay, so let's start with the first face.
The men have no idea they are looking at opposite sex versions of themselves. On average, the results show we don't find faces that look like us attractive.
Did you notice that one of the faces looked like you?
Well, no, I didn't. And I gave myself 5 for attractiveness and a 6 for trustworthiness. So, no, I didn't really find myself attractive. But, yeah, a little, trustworthy, I would say, yeah.
Our brains, it seems, use both smell and sight to avoid mating with people who would likely give us unhealthy offspring. Men and women on the prowl play a game of cat and mouse, sizing up each other's sex appeal while trying to promote their own. The more common name for this game? Flirting.
Alright, so how do I flirt? Not a bad flirt. I'd say, well, I tend to smile a lot, so that happens. I play with my hair.
I think I flirt with my eyes, body movement.
I'm not the aggressive type, so I sit back and maybe try to catch some eye contact.
Well, I have the long hair, so I usually toss that around a little bit and give my sexy eye.
It's a game we instinctively know how to play. And nowhere is it played more urgently than at a speed dating session.
I'm extremely strong, like on the outside, but I need like an emotional support. Like I would like to learn how to tango. Very strong.
Is that where you went to school?
8,000 miles.
Marty Hazelton studies speed dating from an evolutionary point of view.
Speed dating is men and women competing with one another in order to impress the most attractive members of the opposite sex.
The goal of each sex is to find a good partner, but their methods differ.
Men talk about their occupations, talk about their jobs, where they got their degrees. Women may be amping up signs that they are attractive, indications of youth.
Hazelton's research has tried to predict the outcome of speed dates by looking at facial expressions. She found that only one gender actually showed its cards.
A naive observer who's just viewing a videotape of the man interacting with a woman could guess at an above-chance level whether he's really interested in her, but he could not guess whether the woman was interested in the man.
Most of what a man needs to know about a woman is obvious. Her face and body are billboards for her genetic health. But because women look beyond genes, they care about a man's status and resources. And that information has to be teased out.
Women are seeking to elicit information to assess how good of a mate he might be. So they act like they're interested, ask lots of questions, and what is men's response? To do some peacocking, in a sense.
We've all seen it happen. Men think women are into them, and they're usually wrong.
Yeah, I'd probably do it again. It was a fun experience.
It was amazing. It was amazing. The ladies are good.
I don't know if I will be doing this again.
But it turns out men can't be blamed for thinking they're God's gift to women.
You ask a man to assess her level of sexual interest, and he will tend to rate it on the medium to high side. You ask a woman to assess the level of sexual interest, and she'll assess it on the medium to low side. The evolutionary explanation for this is that for men, underestimating a woman's sexual interest, that actually could result in a missed reproductive opportunity, which had huge costs in the evolutionary currency of reproduction.
Better for a guy to try and fail than not try at all. But men's relentless efforts to pick up women may not actually be their fault. More than a decade ago, primatologists discovered that male monkeys pay no attention to sterile females in mating season. But if those females were smeared with sexual secretions from fertile females, males suddenly went crazy for them. The secretions had a specific odor and chemical makeup. Scientists gave them a catchy name, copulins. Women produce similar secretions when they're ovulating. Are copulins another hidden weapon in women's armory of attraction?
The odor is not very pleasant. It's rather like butter gone off.
In Vienna, Karl Grammer and Elisabeth Oberzaucher created artificial copulins and designed an experiment to find out what they did to men. They asked subjects to rate photographs of women while inhaling a low dose of copulins. So low, they were not actually aware of smelling anything. The results were startling.
If a man looks at photographs of women, he will be usually able to tell that there are some more attractive women and some who are less attractive. But when men are exposed to copulins, they will lose actually the ability to distinguish between an attractive and a less attractive woman.
One whiff of copulins causes an immediate spike in male testosterone levels.
Testosterone usually makes you not able to think as clear as you usually do. And now the male cognitive ability to decide if a female is attractive or not breaks down.
Attraction. It's the ultimate human magnetic force. But science is now discovering that attraction has many stages. And what starts as a single biochemical jolt can become a complex chain reaction.
We'd kiss and talk and kiss and talk. So it took a while to get it all out, I guess. I don't know. But the kiss was quite passionate and a lot of fun.
That kiss, yeah, that did it that night.
I kissed him at the door. I don't even know if he knew. You know, it's like the movies. I laid on the door and I was like, oh my God, I really like him. A lot is in a kiss. You're seeing them, smelling them, tasting them, touching them, and hearing them. All of your senses are engaged. So I'm not surprised that a great many people have reported that the first kiss was the beginning of a long, wonderful relationship or the end of it. Men have a good deal of testosterone in their saliva, and so when a man and woman are kissing, she is receiving that testosterone, and testosterone is the hormone of sexual desires.
城市里的忙碌生活，我有 CD 咖啡陪我一起。偶尔停下脚步，在我喜欢的咖啡馆，品味生活里的美好。CD 咖啡邀您一起发现台湾有魅力的咖啡馆，让城市更有味道。Always open 7-Eleven。
分享好咖啡，现在 CD 咖啡第2杯半价哦。
小姐你好，你知道有害细菌正在口腔内滋生吗？
真的吗？
做个口腔扫描吧。你看，细菌在持续滋生。
但我早上有刷牙。
你要用更有效的高露洁全效，它能够帮助你减少细菌滋生率，长达12个小时。咋？用过高露洁全效了吧？
是啊。
再来做次扫描。你看，
真的有效哎。
高露洁全效就是做得到。
高露洁全效保证12小时减少细菌滋生率。高露洁全球牙医第1推荐。
你们在开心什么啊？
因为乳香世家好好喝啊！乳香世家采用日本脱氧技术，避免氧化，保留鲜乳原味，让美味更升级。
妈妈，我还要。
好喝就再来一杯啊！给家人满意的微笑。
美味鲜乳，好喝不腻，乳香世家。
照亮了光芒升起，散开整天的活力，年轻的心往前行。每一天每个地方都有个好的开始，清新自信，
清新自信每一天，黑人牙膏国家品质标章及 GMP 厂认证。
每个重大刑案的发生，都有一段恩怨情仇，从刑案现场的人物激战，从犯罪者的心理活动，我们都可以一步一步的拼图，来还原事实的真相，锲而不舍， 永不放弃，对全世界的警察来说都是一致的。真实性爱，权威剖析，就在 Discovery 特征子。
Testosterone, the lust drug, drives men to compete for women, then mate with them.
Women's behavior changes men's testosterone levels, and that changes the way men behave towards the women. Testosterone also encourages males to be more competitive, and the more competitive the male, the more his mating opportunities.
Testosterone is at the heart of a woman's sex drive as well. But this lust drug will only get you into the sack. The feelings that keep you there stem from another chemical, dopamine.
Dopamine gives you those feelings of elation, giddiness, euphoria, the focused attention.
Dopamine is the brain's pleasure chemical. Drugs like cocaine also get you high by flooding your head with dopamine. With both drugs and sex, the dopamine high is addictive. It keeps us coming back for more.
Intense energy comes from dopamine in the brain, exhilaration, you can walk all night, talk till dawn.
Dopamine, testosterone, elation, and lust all seem to be wrapped up in a complex feedback loop. And elevated dopamine levels seem to raise the sex drive even in non-romantic situations.
4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Thrill sports like bungee jumping deliver a huge dopamine rush. In the experiment to see how status affected men's sex appeal, several women rated this man's photo.
5, 4, 4.
How do you think a group of women who've just done a bungee jump will rate him?
6, 7, 9.
And I was just so excited, and the only person I could think of was my boyfriend. And when I saw him, he was really the only one I could see, and he looked amazing to me.
All it takes is a shot of dopamine to the brain to put us in the mood, and then having sex makes us want more.
Sure, if you feel euphoria, you want to experience it again. You go back for it. You can become addicted to it. You look for it again. You work for it.
If testosterone triggers our sex drive and dopamine makes us addicted to the pleasure of sex, is there a chemical responsible for falling in love? In 2004, Dr. Lucy Brown and Dr. Helen Fisher began scanning the brains of young couples to see if they could detect physical evidence of love.
Well, first of all, Julia, thank you. I'm always, we're doing this brain scanning, and we're scanning people who've just fallen madly in love. And how long have you been in love?
2 years and 8.
When I set out originally, I was absolutely convinced that there would be a brain system associated with intense romantic love. It's too strong. It's too obvious. The poetry, the songs, the novels, the stories, the myths, the legends. It had to be a very basic brain system that evolved for a very important reason. And so I was pretty convinced we would find the brain in love.
They put test subjects inside an MRI scanner and had them look at 2 photos. One of their significant other and one of a casual acquaintance.
We wanted to find the part of the brain that was specific to looking at the beloved. So not just the visual system, there are face areas in the brain, there are all kinds of areas. What would be specific only to the beloved?
The first thing Brown and Fisher noticed when the subjects looked at their significant others was activity in a part of the brain called the ventral tegmental area. This is where dopamine is made. That wasn't all they saw. They also found activity in an entirely different region, a primitive part of the brain called the caudate nucleus.
It's where many factors from our past experience and present environment combine with dopamine to produce an experience.
This is the brain system that gets galvanized when you want something, when you crave something, when you focus on something, when you try to win something.
The mental difference between lust and love boils down to this one structure in the brain. Lust is a thrill-seeker's high, one that fades with time. But falling in love rewards those who relentlessly pursue a goal, to be with their loved one.
You can feel the sex drive for somebody and not be in love with them. And you can be in love with somebody and never have had sex with them. So they are different brain systems.
This evolutionary drive to both seek and stay with a partner is rare in the animal kingdom. Only 3% of mammals do it.
Why do we form pair bonds? Around the world, men and women pair up to rear their young. And in fact, this is extremely uncommon among our mammalian relatives.
Fisher believes that the roots of love may be linked to the one thing that separates us from our primate cousins, standing on 2 feet.
With the beginning of walking, women began to have to carry their babies in their arms instead of on their backs. And I don't see how a woman could have carried the equivalent of a 20-pound bowling ball in one arm and sticks and stones in the other arm and protected herself. So she began to need a mate to help her rear her young. Pair bonding became essential to females and suitable to males, and we evolved this brain system for attachment, that brain system associated with human love.
Are humans biologically programmed to mate for life? Most religions and cultures urge us to. But is that what evolution has in mind?
Human beings can play more than one mating strategy. Okay? It isn't like we have rigidly one kind of mating instinct. Human beings may choose to mate in a monogamous fashion, one man, one woman, and they may stick together with that person. Or they may choose a different sort of a strategy, which is more like other mammals do, which evolutionary psychologists call an unrestricted strategy, in which people don't commit to one another. And you've got multiple sexual partners.
It's long been thought that males are the more promiscuous sex, that they're the ones who play the field. After all, their involvement in child creation need be little more than a one-night stand. But new research is showing that women may also seek sexual variety in the most subtle ways. It's been proven that women tend to prefer guys with masculine faces. Well, some of the time they do. It depends on how close they are to ovulation. Here are 2 different versions of the same man. Women prefer the more masculine one when they're ovulating, the more feminine one when they're not. The preference for masculine traits at peak fertility makes sense, but the next piece of the puzzle is a bit of a shock. That preference is not just restricted to single women. Women, even married ones, may be biologically driven to promiscuity.
So women might choose as a long-term mate a partner who possesses good dad traits, kind, willing to provide for a woman and her offspring. Then, under certain circumstances, engage in unfaithful behavior in order to gain access to those sexy traits, those traits that are indicators of good genes that she could then pass on to offspring. When would this be for a woman? Well, first of all, when her long-term partner doesn't possess those traits. And secondly, during the narrow window within the reproductive cycle during which she could become pregnant. It doesn't make sense for a woman to engage in unfaithful behavior if she has no chance of conceiving an offspring.